All right, guys, we're going to get started here. We have a couple of announcements, and then we're going to do some lightning talks here. Thank you guys for hanging out, and we appreciate you coming. And if you are interested in taking the next step with PyOhio, we are definitely interested in starting early with volunteers, organizers. If you have an interest in helping out and making PyOhio even greater, which I'm not sure it can actually get any greater. I guess there is always room for improvement, but it was pretty damn great this year. So, all right, so I'm going to give it to Brian.
So Eric stole just a little bit of my thunder there, because that's what I was going to say. Thanks, everybody, for coming out, and especially for sticking out to the end here with us. So just a couple of really quick announcements. PyOhio 2016, we've already arranged it with the university. It will be the last weekend in July, July 30th and 31st, right here again. So everybody mark your calendars right now. The other thing I'd like to announce in terms of new people coming on board, we actually have Jan Milosh is going to be joining us as part of a new operations group that we're putting together to help smooth out some of the rough edges of the conference. And she's going to be taking over all the fun stuff to do with the t-shirt sales and designing shirts and getting that all out of my hair. So thanks, Jan. And Dana Engerbretson from the Twin Cities PyLadies will also be joining the organizing committee as one of our additional diversity chairs doing diversity outreach. And Matt Wilson, who has had the hardest job there is for the past few years, which is the program chair, figuring out who talks and trying to run down people to submit talks and run down people to actually jury the talks and all that fun stuff, is going to be stepping up and joining me as co-chair next year in 2016, and they'll be taking over as chair in 2017. That also means that we need to find a new co-program chair to shadow Matt, so we actually have somebody to run the programs in 2017, because he can't be chair and do that at the same time. So anyone that is interested in joining the organizing committee, especially in that capacity, we want to hear from you. So you can pigeonhole me before we leave here tonight, or just my name and phone number actually still on the PyOhio website for the whole code of conduct thing. Just look the thing up and give me a call and say, hey, I want to help. Other than that, that's all I have. Once again, thank you for coming. It's been a great year. You've been great attendees. You guys make the conference. We just facilitate. Thanks.
All right, so I live in a town. How many people here live in a town or a city or a rural area? Why are their hands down? You don't live somewhere? Okay. I live in a town called Ambridge, and in December, I acted on a crazy idea that I've had for a while, which is, why does our town not have an issue tracker? So I went on GitHub, and I made an issue tracker for Ambridge. So you can go browse issues relative to our town: 19th Street between Duss and Oak signage, install audible walk signals at busy intersections, right? All things relevant to nobody here, but extremely relevant to people. Get someone in the old bottom dollar, right? Awesome. There's 45 open tickets. There's 20 closed tickets since December. Then I went around, so I started this, but nobody in my town knows about GitHub besides me, and I guess my wife, because she hears me talk about it. And so I had to go around, and everyone I saw in the coffee shops, I said, pull out your cell phone and go to github.com and click sign up for an account. And then once you're signed up for a free account, search for Ambridge and click the watch button, right? And now you're going to get emails about every issue that somebody thinks needs to happen in our town, and you can contribute to making our town more awesome. Then I went to the borough office, and I set up an appointment with the council president and the borough manager, and we sat down, and I said, okay, guys, I just want you to know, there's no ask. I'm not asking for you to buy something. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just informing you of this citizen initiative that we've got going. and want you to be aware, that we're going to be talking amongst ourselves about how to make the town better. And to my complete surprise, they loved it, okay? So this is, so this is a friend of mine posting something here. This is Joe Cower, the borough manager of Ambridge, Pennsylvania, on GitHub, responding to a citizen's input, okay? And they're going back and forth. This is, let me find another one, good one, right? So so we had all these things. Purchase a commercial grade line painting machine. I think this one we could actually close. I think we have that now. So here, this one, I love this. Mike McCoolidge. Ambridge is a steel town. It's Rust Belt. It's a situation a lot of us here are probably familiar with. This guy is not a hipster, all right? Mike McCoolidge is, an older gentleman. He's generations in Ambridge. He's like a stereotypical borough council president of a Rust Belt town, all right? He's on GitHub. He's on GitHub closing tickets, all right? How cool is that? I mean, this guy's awesome, Our local government gets a bad rep because most of what they get from people is bitching, to be honest, right? And we need to get over that, right? The stuff that Catherine was talking about yesterday, the fun thing about living in a small town is it's a small town, you can actually do it, right? Like there's little bureaucracy, you can actually go meet some people, have a coffee, and get some stuff done. And when you actually talk to people, you find out that local government actually does want to have a better relationship with citizens, right? Actually does want communication tools and better communication. And we've got it, right? I mean, as Catherine was talking about, we figured this out. So this is a call to action. Go back to your town and set up, maybe it's GitHub that works for you. It does take a lot of work, a lot of hand-holding, a lot of education, because this is not Facebook, right? Facebook doesn't have a done button at the bottom, right? Like the point of GitHub is to actually collaborate and get stuff done. People aren't used to actually doing that, so it does take a lot of hand-holding and work. There's another tool called Lumio, which is anyone familiar with Lumio or actually used it? I think they're out of New Zealand. I don't know. But it's another tool designed more for citizen engagement kind of stuff. So it doesn't have the geek brand to it, which can be off-putting for some people about GitHub. So this would be another thing to explore. But the tools are out there, and and we can go and make real the dream that Catherine was inspiring us with yesterday. So let's do it. Thank you.
Yeah, now I get all your search history. This is great.
I'm sweating.
All right, so while Chad was giving his talk, I went ahead and forked Ambridge. Woohoo! And so Charlottesville, Virginia now has its own issue tracker. We'll have to get the word out. There are a few people who live in Charlottesville. GitHub made it trivial to fork and go and edit the page. My name is Ron Duplain. I decided I wanted to give a talk which was to fit as much as I can in 5 minutes because I love lightning talks. So here we go. 4.5. I like to make bread, so I make pretzels, and it's a ciabatta there, and Lavon. The way I taught myself bread is the same way you learn programming. If you ever want to talk about that, I'm happy to talk. I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and it's a really exciting place. I want to tell you about it because it has a vibrant tech community, but it's not that big of a town. One thing happening is Center for Open Science has an integration grant they told you about yesterday. I'm just here to remind you that you can write code for open science. You can write a grant. You can get a grant to do your work, which is really exciting. I'm part of a startup called Maternity Neighborhood, and we are mission-focused as well. Our goal is to improve maternity care through a care model and supporting that through technology. And I also, because I've been recruiting in this town for 5 years, I decided to do some independent work as a recruiter. And so if you're looking for a great job, my advice in 5 points or less are: 1, to be curious, to show that you just get engaged, really think about what is it that excites you about what the other people are doing, whatever it might be. There's an article written here by the person who founded Hackseaville. That's really exciting. The slides are all posted. I would focus on your objective, not on your experience. What do you want to do? What problems do you want to solve? What technologies do you want to use? Show that you're working towards that objective. You have to be able to do that if you want to do that. And this is important. Talk to people like you would at Pi Ohio, and everything gets easier. You know, don't just send a cold application. Maybe write an email, say, your company seems really interesting, can I come see what you do? And then you can kind of get in and do your thing. And take one step at a time, write a very short and to-the-point pitch. Your goal in the cover is to get an interview, not to say everything you've ever wanted to say. So I'm a recruiter. I'm always happy to talk to candidates about their potential. So I'm totally happy to talk to anyone here about that, about what I see in the market, what I think your salary potential is, all that kind of stuff. But in particular, I can tell you about all the job opportunities in Charlottesville, Virginia, which are particularly exciting. And like I said, it's a small town, but we're vibrant. Look at this beautiful downtown mall. Isn't it great? Pedestrian-only place for several blocks. That's wonderful. All right. But I'm working on a project called Stream Parse. This is through a company called Parsley, and the president, CTO, and co-founder of Parsley lives in Charlottesville because it's just that great of a place to live. And Stream Parse is built upon Apache Storm, which is a technology for doing stream processing in Java. But what's really neat about it is that like this is HTOP running on Andrew's system, and this is basically each one of these is a Python process. He's fully pegging each process with Python, and so if you ever thought that Python could scale, it sure can. And Stream Parse is a project on which you can do that. So this is just a really quick plug to check out Stream Parse if you're interested in streaming distributed computing with Python. And related to that, PyKafka is another technology that Parsley is working on. And it's a Python binding for Kafka. Kafka is a technology which solves the lattice problem. Instead of having every system talk to every system, you have a unified log. And these two technologies I'm describing are open source. And what's great about it is that they're DARPA funded. And that's actually how I was able to get in and actually get paid to even work on it, which is awesome. So there's some really interesting stuff happening there. And I'd like to tell you how to take PyOhio home, in particular with $0. And I'm going to do this. If anyone from meetup.com ends up watching this, it's because I really hated how you shut down my site. So I'm going to tell people how to sign up for $0. Create a meetup, go to the credit card page, and then abort. And then their sales will contact you and say, hey, I saw you're interested in meetup.com, so why don't you try it free for 6 months? That's a great way to get your meetup started. I wanted to get the hack out there so you guys can also start your meetup. I heard it from a guy out in Albuquerque. There you have it. And then another thing I think is really interesting, I'm always curious. I use Python 3 in production, and I think you should too. But how many people are actually using Python 3 is really interesting question. And there's some really awesome data here from Donald Stuft. And we see that it's currently about 75% are still in Python 2, if you can believe it. So there's that's the link to the slides. Go check it out if you want to look at anything I just showed you here. Thank you.
So my talk is called Computer Color's Importance. I'm Scott Siebert, and I work in an academic lab that does image processing, so I should know why. I should know why that when you mix red and green, you get that ugly brown color in the middle. Before I watched a minute physics video, I didn't know why. And I really should. I should know all the nasty details of how colors are stored and all that. But I didn't, and I'm here to explain why. It turns out that when you take an image, your camera sees X pixels at or X photons at a certain pixel. It stores square root of X in the JPEG file, which makes sense for how our eyes work, and it saves half the space. And our monitors display the square of that, which makes more sense. But files and programs typically read, if they read like a red value and a green value, they typically find the average of just that. The thing on the left, the method I call physically incorrect. What would be more physically correct is to square the values, take their average, and then take the square root to get back into RGB. Right? But almost every program is lazy and does the physically incorrect method. Photoshop, every program I've ever written. I mean, it's widespread. It's, you know, Photoshop, GIMP, you know, the default editors, they all do it. So so when you average red and green, you would expect something in between red and green, right? Not some ugly brown color. So when you average red and green using that square to physically correct method on the last slide, you get that red, yellow, green on the right-hand side. If you do it the lazy method or the physically incorrect method, you get the ugly brown color. And there's the Python above is an example. And so I would like you to all use, so instead of saying grayscale is just the average of the 3 RGB channels, say no, it's the average of the squares square rooted. And this has real world effects. I tested a deblurring program, a deblurring algorithm, and I found better results, the result on the left-hand side, with the method I used, or the squaring then taking the square root, which is an sRGB approximation, which you can change in Photoshop, by the way. And I learned through this whole experience, I learned that color spaces are not as simple as I thought they were. And color, and especially how you see your data, is very important. Like, for example, Matplotlib has a current default of a color map called Jet, which you use to show 3D graphs or to show a 2D array of anything. And Jet is horrible. It's not very nice because it has bands. It has like a band of green, you see. It has a band of yellow. It has a band of red. That's not perceptually uniform. It's just a band of red. And from red to yellow is a big difference. Or red to green is a big difference. What we'd like to see is the new default, Viridis, which is kind of it's perceptually uniform. It goes from dark blue to kind of a yellow-green type thing. And we'd like to see more of that. They've even done studies on Jet, and they found with medical students that they were slower and less accurate when they used the color map Jet. When they used other color maps like E, B, F, C, or G, they were more accurate. So that's all I have, but just know this.
It started at the Cat's Meow thrift shop in Corvallis, Oregon, on my 55th birthday. I received a gift of 3 vintage photographs of a train collision. This one. If you look at this train, it looks like it has fallen over, but there are 2 boxcars in the front, and there are 2 boxcars in the back. It's a rather odd way of making a train. What's the story here? There were 3 photographs in all, very dramatic terrain, and obviously very old photographs. What was the story, and how in the world do I find out what the story is behind this? The only clue that I had was scrawled on the back of one of these photos. This bit of information, wreck on, it looks like a T, and maybe something else and some R's, and Acme Mine, 1915. Well, how do you find out the story with just that information? I got on Google and looked up Acme Mine. What do you get? Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. Acme everything. But you know something? It was the right clue. The Wile E. Coyote was always the Mojave Desert. And so I looked up Acme Mine on minedat.org. And I found this mine called the Amargosa Mine, in parens Acme Mine, in San Bernardino County, California, in some rather rough-looking terrain. There it is. So what is this place? Where am I exactly? Let's scroll around here. This looks interesting. What is this? Zoom in, zoom in. It's the China Ranch Date Farm and Bakery. Get on Google, look that up. Get on Google Maps and find the China Ranch Date Farm and Bakery. Now start going down the mountain, or down the side, and look for signs that there used to be a railroad here. What do you see along here? This long curve. Perhaps this is a railroad. And maybe around there, like there used to be a railroad there sometime. Well, let's go over to Google Earth instead and look at that same place. Yes, much better view. We can see that there used to be some sort of grade here of some sort. But with Google Earth, we can now look up and look at the mountainside here. Look at this interesting little spot right there. And then go back over to the original photograph, and that little spot right there. I found the location in under 10 minutes from just that little bit of information by using Google Earth and Google Maps. But that didn't tell me anything about the story. So anyway, I looked up China Ranch, Acme Mine, and Amargarosa, Mojave Desert, and found this is the Tenapa and Tidewater Railroad, originally made by the people who did the borax 100 Mule Team borax mines in Southern California. And this was a dramatic crash. They had gone up this, I found a newspaper clipping from the era. They had gone up the canyon to retrieve boxcars, leaving passenger cars behind. They mixed trains in that era. They had gotten up there. They didn't have air brakes in that era, and they were setting these manual brakes on the tops of the train cars. They lost them, and they started rolling down the canyon toward the passengers in the waiting train cars. They got in their steam engine, pulled out all the stops, and chased those boxcars, trying to connect with them and stop before they ran into the passenger cars. They finally connected and got down to the bottom of that canyon and tumbled over 20 yards from the full passenger cars, about 150 people. The engineer was badly burned when the boiler split open. The fireman died. But 100 people were saved from this horrible fate. This railroad, that particular engine, was righted, fixed, and worked for another 40 years in the Mojave Desert heat. It was engine number 9. I was able to find out that information in that short amount of time. That is the story of the Tenapa and Tidewater crash of number 9. Thank you.
Yo, does that work? All right, sweet. So this is going to be about the quickest lightning talk you've ever heard. I went to a talk earlier. It was the packaging from init to deploy. And we were joking around about something afterwards, and I was instructed that we should have actually gotten this on record, but we were talking about it after the cameras turned off. So I just wanted to put on record that we need to go back to the cheese shop, be done with this confusion about pie pie versus pie pie versus pie pie versus pie pie. So let's just as a group right now say we'll call it the cheese shop and never be confused again. All right, thanks.
Love the Python logging framework, and I love Postgres, and so I mixed them together so that all my log messages land in Postgres. This is a project that I was amazed didn't already exist, and so it exists now. You can go to GitHub, 216 Software, log2pg. Hopefully that name's pretty intuitive. And using it, whoops, that's me. So using it is real simple. You just define how I talk to your database, and then in the most recent version of the logging Python framework, what you do is you make a dictionary. And this is the way you would make the Postgres stuff. You say, okay, I need an instance of this guy, and then I need a table name. That's where your logs are going to be. And then you give me the parameters I can use to talk to your database. After you do that, logging config.dictconfig, you pass in that dictionary, and then you just use logging just like normal. What makes it great is if you're like us and you have like systems that run unattended for days and you want to come back and study the effect later, let me show you guys what the difference is. I mean, cat and grep and cut and sort and unique are really fun tools, but there comes a point in life where like a proper SQL database and being able to run real queries is good too. So I'll show you what it looks like. This is just one of our production systems. This is fun to watch me stumble around on, all right? So this is I'm in Postgres right now, and so for this particular system, we named the table log, Dazzle log, so you can just see all right, so what are some of the recent log files? So you get a timestamp, that's boring. You get the process ID, you get all these things, you get everything that you can get from logging is stored in here. What's great, though, is that I can ask weird questions like, what went wrong in the web app last week? And then I can even do kind of full text search stuff because I've got that set up. I can say, show me any database logs above, you know, info or worse, because it's all in a database. And sure, really savvy command line people can do this kind of stuff with cut and grep, but they cannot do stuff like show me everything in this module, horsemeat.config wrapper, or any of its submodules. So because I'm using a Postgres L tree type, I can say star dot some word, and it'll find like anything for the first two modules. So try it out. Let me know what you think. Logging to Postgres has turned out to be really fun. Thanks.
So, how many people raise your hand if you use Windows? Okay. Raise your hand if you use virtual env. Raise your hand if you've been bitten by the compile bug. Okay, so there's this thing called Conda, which is made by Continuum Analytics. It is actually open source. And if you just search on mini Conda install, it will get you to installers for Windows, Mac, and Linux. And just to show you that it's not just Linux, I also have Windows. All right, so in virtual env, I use virtual env wrapper. So you know, to create a new virtual env, you do make virtual env, and you say, you know, pi Ohio 15. In Conda, you do Conda create -n pi Ohio 15. Now, when I do make virtual env pi 15, it's going to install with the system Python, or any installed Python. If I do the -p option, I can choose, you know, user bin Python, oops, or actually I'll just do Python. I can choose Python 3.4, right? But it has to be a Python that's actually installed in the system. Now with Conda create, you actually can choose any Python version, like 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 2.7, 2.8. Wait, no, not 2.8, 2.7. All right, so I can actually create it in 2.7 or 3.4. And now with virtual env, it automatically creates and puts me into the environment, whereas Conda does not. However, it gives you nice instructions on exactly what you need to do to start your environment. So you do source activate, pi 15. And then now we're in equivalent environments. These are, I can do pip install, but I would never want to do that if I have a Conda already available, because how many people have tried to actually compile SciPy, for example? Conda install SciPy. Boom. Okay, so see, it's going to be really quick. Now, since I've already got this cached here, it's not going to be as fun, but you know, I'm using a cached version. Anyway, I'm going to show you how to do this in Windows. Looks very familiar. Conda create -n, pi 15, Python, and what version do I want? Oh, let's do this one with 3.2. Boom. It's going to try and find Python 3.2. It's going to install it. Oops, there is no Python 3.2 maybe. Maybe it only uses current versions. Anyway. Okay, so there we go. It's going to get that. This is Windows. Oh, it's still installing over here, but it's trying to download here, so I think I've got network issues. Anyway, so there we go. No, that's done. Okay, so now if I do Python and I do import SciPy, boom, I've got it. Here I'm still waiting. And then we go here. We do activate pi 15. This is Windows, right? I mean, if you're using Windows, Mini Conda is like, I would totally recommend it for doing your environment. So if I do Python, look, it's 3.4 on Windows. Let's install, let's install SciPy in Windows. Anyone actually try and compile anything on Windows? All right, me neither. All right, so there you go. So now it's going to download SciPy. These are pre-compiled packages. You don't need to have a compiler. You don't need to have dependencies, libraries, and stuff. It actually pulls in all the libraries it needs and whatnot. So that's it. There you go. And we're still waiting for pip install. So, try Conda. It's great. All right, I'm up next, apparently.
I can also just install Anaconda and all the packages come in.
Yeah, so the difference between mini Conda and Anaconda is Anaconda comes pre-installed with about 200 some packages. So if you are in a scientific workflow, then Anaconda definitely is great, but mini Conda is closer to the virtual ENV equivalent. All right, so my next talk is not going to be 5 minutes exactly, but here are a few things I'd like you guys to keep in mind. Not for next year, but for the years after next year. PyOhio 2017 will be the 10th anniversary of PyOhio. It's pretty amazing how far we've come since the very first PyOhio. I actually, the very first PyCon I ever attended was in Chicago in 2008. And I stumbled into an open space. And in that open space was a PyOhio organization committee for PyOhio 2008, which was the second PyOhio. Catherine was there. There were a number of people from Cleveland there, and I didn't know a soul. And I went in there, and wouldn't you know it, I got roped in, and that's one of my first memories of PyOhio. I gave my first talk ever that I'd given in front of an audience at PyOhio, the third PyOhio. Second PyOhio. I actually talked at the second PyOhio. So what I would like to do for the 10th anniversary of PyOhio is, if anybody knows any like video editors and people like that, Carl's one of them, but I would like to collect everyone's memories of their own PyOhio and put them into a video montage that we can put out there, because I know that PyOhio has been very meaningful to me, and I know it's meaningful to other people too. All right. So then in 2018, PyCon Portland will be done, and historically, PyCon has moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, East Coast, West Coast. In 2018, PyCon is going to hopefully come back to the East Coast. And I know that people have already started thinking about this, and I don't know if Jason Myers is still here from Nashville, but Nashville, Columbus, anywhere somewhere around here would be great to have PyCon come. So I'm pretty sure that Jason Myers has already started thinking about this. And I know that Brian Koslow has already started thinking about this as well. So if you have any thoughts about where PyCon 2018 and 2019 should be and want to help organize it, I'm probably not going to be the one to organize that, but I'm just throwing that out there. All right, that's all I got.
All good things come to an end. In 1995, I built a yurt. People have been asking me about yurts and are shocked to hear that I live in one full-time and have for, 20 years this year. I built my yurt in 1995 after a flood destroyed the cabin I was living in. And I learned about yurts. I didn't know if I was going to stay on this farm, so I decided to build a portable one. And by doing so, I selected a plot of land. By the way, this is also one of the oldest websites you'll ever find on the web. It was put up in 1995. Tags, HTML tags were all uppercase, and it was .htm, not HTML. And also, this is my own system written in Python way back a long time ago to generate a hard-coded website. But anyway, we selected a plot of land and built a ring of wood, and then built these pie shells that were built, pie wedges that were built to put into the back of a pickup truck so it could be portable. We put sheets of plywood on it to form the floor, and then took a circular saw and put a rope on it and went all the way around the edges to saw those edges off. And then, buying a kit from a company called Pacific Yurts, spread out the the lattice framework, started putting up the roof, and then the upper ring. Yurts use a steel cable around the edges. As the heavier the roof gets, the stiffer the walls get. The yurt almost done, almost framed up. Starting putting canvas layers on it, putting the upper canvas on, the doorway, from the inside, the view. The insulation, originally designed for the space shuttle, it's bubble pack, essentially with foil laminated on the other side, R19 and 3/8 of an inch. Starting to look like some sort of space capsule of some sort. Putting the outer shell on, and then the roof, the dome on the top, and we have a completed yurt. That was 3 days of work back in 1995. This yurt, a couple years ago, was damaged in a flood. And so, all good things come to an end. This is tearing down that same yurt 18 years later. Notice how the greenery has completely gone around it from where it was.
Where's all your stuff?
It was removed earlier by the flood. Undoing everything in the same order that it was done, except right here, I ran inside over at the old farmhouse and wrote some Python code for Mozilla. And then came back remembering, oh yeah, I was filming this. Up. And that was the end. So, all things come to an end. Just like Pi Ohio, a good thing comes to an end. Thank you very much, everyone, for this wonderful conference. I really enjoyed myself here.